I feel like, Victor, you should be the one to introduce this particular episode.
Introduce Lillian?
Yeah, Lillian.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll take their hands. I wasn't expecting that. I feel like you should be doing it because Rix has known Lillian now for what? At least 15 years, right?
Oh, man, I've known her since she became the senior minister of First Congregation Church of Glen Ellen, was the senior minister there for nearly a decade. I was very young when I first met her. She took me under her wing as a mentee, got me into ministry in the first place, sent me off to seminary, very influential individual in my life. Now, the reason why I said that Victor should introduce this is because he's the one who spent most of the time picking her brain and challenging her theologically, whereas Neil and I were sort of, like, for me, I talked with her all the time, so I was, like, sitting off and all that. Neil, he was still a little shy at the time, like, not really, super vocal about a lot of stuff, but Neil does offer some fun commentary, but Victor and Lillian, like, sort of go back and forth about spiritual but not religious, and, like, going to church and stuff like that. It's a very funny episode, actually.
It is very funny.
It's a surprisingly funny episode.
Yes, it's very good. And the crazy thing is, who would have thought a reverend was once in a punk rock band?
Band. I know.
So surprising.
Some crazy stuff.
Never judge a book by its cover.
But I mean, the fact that even though Lillian has moved on to bigger and better things in the world of ministry, she moved to Iowa shortly after we ended up filming. But this episode, again, another timeless episode that I think she provides a lot of really insightful commentary into why religion for a progressive or like moderate or reasonable rational person is important.
Yes.
Like science and religion not incompatible. Like science and rationale religion and rationale not incompatible.
Yeah.
It's a very, I find it enlightening.
Yeah. And if you happen to just be a first-time listener or just have listened to a couple episodes,
then what are you doing?
Do yourself a favor, go back and listen to our special announcement between episodes 94 and 95 to figure out what is going on, because this is not the normal routine that we normally do. And then do yourself and go back and listen to start with episode 95 at the beginning of this segment, and then when you're done with this segment, do yourself a favor, go all the way back and start at episode number 1, and come back and meet up with us later.
Meet us up in about a year from now.
Yeah, meet us a year from now. But anyway, enough talk. On Stream of Thought, featuring the Reverend Lillian Daniels, or is it Reverend Doctor Reverend?
Which Daniel?
Daniel, I'm sorry. I thought there was an S. But she's also a
Reverend
doctor.
Reverend Doctor.
Reverend Doctor Lillian Daniel.
Yes. Esquire.
Not
Esquire, but...
Reverend Dr. Lillian Daniel. Stream of Thought. We hope you enjoy. Okay, so on today's episode of Straight Up, we have minister and author Lillian Daniel. One of her books is out. It's called When Spiritual But Not Religious Is Not Enough. She's also traveled to speak, and tell us some of the places that you've been to, actually.
Well, let's see. I spoke at the Festival of Homiletics. Oh, what's that? It's like a preaching festival in Denmark.
Okay.
That was really cool. And it was like 3 weeks before I was going, and then I emailed the woman. I'm like, you do know that I don't speak Danish. And she was like, oh, no, it's okay. We all speak English.
Cool.
It was really cool.
How many places, have you been anywhere where you're like, oh my gosh, nobody here speaks English. How am I going to get around?
Yeah, I felt like that in New Zealand.
Yeah. Wait, no. Where were you just talking? Denmark.
Well done.
It's like, oh, New Zealand.
Totally
Wait, what?
No,
I don't know where we're going.
You know what? I went to Thailand just for fun.
Yeah.
And I was out at the beach, and it was this very remote location where you could only get there by water. And I was like, shoot, no, it's truly, people did not speak English. It was really weird. Yeah. It was really weird. Yeah. There were a lot of tourists there, but they were from Japan, Australia, and it was pretty cool.
Are people friendly in Thailand?
Yeah, really friendly.
I hear they're, like, very entertaining and love to have a good time and completely open about partying and things like that.
Well, they seemed very friendly. Of course, I didn't understand what they were saying. They probably were like, oh, we hate you. Smiling, but yeah. Gotcha. No, it was fun. It's a very open society. Like,
Cool.
So anyway, welcome to Straight Up.
This
is exciting because this is a guest that I wanted to have on. So you guys have had your, shot so far. So I've known Lillian for quite some time, and she is quite the renowned individual. She has quite the resume, and I don't know, is there something that you want to share with our audience about yourself?
Well, probably the most important thing about me is that I got to hear Rick's give the sermon on Senior High Sunday back in Glen Ellen.
God, years and years
ago. He was always gifted. He always had the magic.
Always had the magic. I like that. See, we should have her on more often. She's, talking me up.
Yeah, I don't know, like, watching Rick's preach, it's pretty cool, because, like, he was, like, talking to Rick was always interesting, but then, like, when I would see him preach, and he was just so passionate about it, I was like, okay, like, it makes sense to me now, kind of, why Rick's is the way he is. But,
well, I remember when you were in Union Seminary in New York, and everything was Occupy Wall Street. And Rick's came back to DuPage County, Republican suburbs of DuPage County, and preached this whole, like, Occupy Wall Street sermon. And it was like crickets in the congregation.
Wait, I didn't hear this. I was like, it was good. It was
there
fun.
were some people, though, looking like they were about to jump out of their
what
skin.
the hell is he doing?
It was great.
Oh, that was fun. It's my home. I can totally do that. I have a right to say that sort of stuff.
And you'd met those people. You'd been there. So it was It was cool.
I've never had a conversation with you're a minister now.
Yes.
You were a minister at another church. Now you're a minister at a new church.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way. Like, I've never had a conversation with a female minister. What's it like? Like, is there backlash? Is it awkward?
Yeah. Well, I've never been a male minister, so I don't really know what that feels like, right?
Okay.
But it is that sense of, like, people are like, oh, wait, you're the minister?
Okay.
You don't remind people of what they think a minister is going to be.
If you read her book, she talks about that a little bit.
But nobody, you don't presume anything, right?
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know what it's like to be in the other position,
Like, I guess, like, so what I'm getting at is a lot of the women I hear or are discriminated against in the workplace. Do you feel like you received that similar discrimination being in ministry as a lady?
I don't feel like I've been discriminated against. I've had great jobs and opportunities.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of friends who are just as smart and hardworking as me or better who haven't had those chances.
Okay.
So there's a lot of discrimination in the church. I mean, my particular path has been good, but and a lot of women quit, because they just get tired of it. They just get tired of it.
That's crazy.
They call it the stained glass ceiling.
The stained glass ceiling.
Yeah.
The stained glass.
Who calls it the stained glass ceiling?
Like the women clergy,
Oh, really?
It's
That's
the glass ceiling. Yeah.
Interesting.
And a lot of times women clergy are the associate minister, or it's presumed they want to work with children. So I was always like, I do not want to work with your children.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is. And in our churches, they can choose their own minister. So there's no kind of, like, affirmative action. Like, there's nobody who can say you're going to take a woman even if you don't want one. The congregation gets to choose. So in some ways, it's slow moving.
Gotcha. So yeah, you earned I got you.
Well, it helps being a rebel too. I feel like you're a bit of a counter-culturalist when it comes to a lot of the way that things work.
Yeah.
Anywhere from, punk rock band. What I don't know if you guys have more interest in that sort of.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say what led to just apply to Yale. Just got in, and I'm gonna start that's a really prestigious school. Like, what made you just apply there, and what also made you kind of go in the direction of ministry?
Well, so actually, I applied to Yale Divinity School straight out of college, mostly so I could say I had something to do,
Right.
And then, but I wanted to be a minister, and then I went to the church and said I wanted to be a minister, and I got rejected. So they told me not to go to Yale. They said I had no business going to
Oh,
school.
man. Like Michael Jordan getting cut from the basketball team just to come back as a champion.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
But I was devastated, but I took it seriously, and I went and worked for a couple of years. And then I ended up going anyway to Yale Divinity School. And then I was accepted in the ministry in a different denomination.
Did they say no because you were a woman, or because they were just like, who is this person asking us to be a
no, they
minister?
said that I was immature and a thrill seeker, and I had issues with authority.
Blasphemy.
All of which was true. Yeah,
you had some haters back then.
I did.
But I feel then, like, from, like, people like you kind of, like, shake things up, make it a little more exciting than have it be just so bland and boring, which is what a huge majority of people perceive it to be when they're not a part of something they like.
Well, I think with the ministry, there's a lot of crazy people who want to be ministers, and so they have to have some way to weed people out.
They gotta have a safeguard. Yeah.
And so they get risk averse, you know. So I think they weed out some of the crazy people, but they also weed out interesting people. You know, like I was in a punk rock band, and they were like, "Oh, you're immature."
But then if you're immature and you're like this punk rock, where you're like, "No, I still want to do this," like you'll eventually find your way to do it.
Yeah, I
So
think
that's
so.
cool.
And also, it's like, hey, I'm not that old. Like, you know, it's like I was being punished for not being an old person. Like, you know, oh, you haven't had much life experience. It's like, you know, and back then, like, there's this big thing about ministers who had full careers already in another field. So it's like, oh, you know, he was a partner in a law firm, and now he's going to be a minister. Isn't that wonderful? And they'd be like, Lillian, what career have you had? And I'm like, well, I worked at the movie theater, did some babysitting.
But you know what's advantageous to hiring someone that's young and doesn't have experience of the world, just crapping all over them. Like I was watching a documentary on Star Wars the other night, and when George Lucas was making Star Wars, there were things he wanted to do, and they're all like, no, it can't be done. Like this is impossible. And then he's like, and then they just hired a bunch of like people. They're like 20, 25, 30. To figure out some crazy problem. They would never think that something wouldn't work, and he used them, and that's how they got all the crazy strategies to make the movie that now have been used for 30 years, 40 years, you know?
Yep. I'm going to see Star Wars this afternoon.
Nice. So tell us about the punk rock band.
Okay, so I was in this punk rock band called Geek, and it was for a couple years, and I played the bass, and it was... I mean, I broke up the band to go to divinity school, and that was probably like the best I could have done for the
So you were
art
taking
world.
full responsibility for breaking this band up.
I broke the band up. So when I broke the band up, when I went to school, you know, everyone had to kind of break up because we were in D.C., and we were part of the D.C. punk rock scene that was around this Discord Records, and if you're familiar with that, it was like Positive Force, straight edge, you know.
Right. Okay.
And so when I was going to New Haven, you know, that was it. But we had a tour, a summer tour where we it was called the Wet Behind the Ears tour, and it was 3 bands, Geek, and then Seaweed from Seattle, and then Superchunk from North Carolina, and they're still a band.
Really?
Yeah, they're
All
like
classic names right there.
Those are all super like punk rock
Yeah,
names. If those were
yeah.
just on paper and I just read them, I had to guess a genre for sure.
Punk rock.
What were some of the bands that you enjoyed listening to growing up?
Well, I did not listen to that much punk rock music, even though I played in a punk rock band. I like funk music. That's my favorite. Like I love Earth, Wind, and Fire. You know that kind of thing.
I knew you had some.
There we go.
There we go.
But
Come
the
on.
bands that we were influenced by as a band was the big band was Fugazi with Ian MacKaye, and we once opened for them, and then we once opened for Sonic Youth.
Okay.
That was as kind of famous as we got.
So what do you think would have happened with the direction of your band if you didn't go to divinity school?
Well, Jenny Toomey, our singer, who's sort of was like the leader, you know, she went on to form another band that was like much more successful, so that was a good thing, and also has done some solo recording and stuff. And Derek Denkla is playing in a band now, and our drummers one of our drummers, Ivor Hansen, wrote a book about being a window washer in New York. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So, everybody kind of went on and did interesting
their own
things.
thing.
You know what? Everyone, when I was working in the city in the Hancock building and the window washers would come, everyone just kind of stopped and just kind of watched them. And then when they'd be done, they'd go down. Everyone would just go back to work.
Well, he wrote a book about doing that.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That's got to be really, really fucking scary.
Yeah.
Excuse my language,
Yeah.
but holy cow.
Yeah. Well, he was really tall, so maybe it wasn't as scary for him.
Yeah. My goodness, though. That creeped me out.
But the band was really, it was really fun. I mean, I was the least talented in it, and others took it more seriously, you know. So they kind of went on and did better things. But I loved being in it.
Would you say, just kind of change gears here, going back to you growing up and choosing the path that you did, would you say there was a series of events your whole life that led you to go to divinity school and do what you do, or do you think that there was there just one particular thing that maybe just happened for you, or how would you describe your path as from where you started as a child to where you are now?
Well, I grew up overseas, and my dad was a journalist, so we would move to a different country every couple of years. So Japan, Thailand, India, the Philippines, Hong Kong, London.
Jealous already.
Yeah, well, and it was a crazy life, but I didn't know any different. But the one thing that was the same was church. We went to Anglican churches, or Episcopal, they're called here. And so, you'd say the same prayers and sing the same songs, and it's very, sort of like this prayer book.
Right.
And I think it's, you don't need a degree in psychology to say, that was my stability. And I think I kind of was drawn toward the church for that reason.
Okay, so all of these world travels you had, but the consistency with the church kind of influenced you wanting to go into ministry.
Yeah, and my family was, pretty crazy, and so, church was a nice place.
Cool. Good crazy, I hope.
Yeah, well, sometimes, they're good people.
Yeah, we've all got that going on. Cool.
Yeah.
So you wanted to get into ministry, you decided to be in a band, you did your thing in a band for a little bit.
Yeah.
You ended up going to divinity school in Yale. Okay, and tell us about what your experience was like at Yale.
Yale was great.
Yeah.
I had a great time there.
She has all those Yale tendencies.
What do you mean?
I don't know. You just give off that vibe.
I do.
Yeah. There's like an insider circle for people who go to Yale. It's like in the UCC. It's like anyone of notoriety has gone to Yale at least once in their life.
It's better than people who go to Harvard. Like, people who go to Harvard are the worst. They're always like, "Oh, I went to school in Cambridge." You're like, "What school did you go to?"
of course.
And they won't say it, and they're like, then you just know they're saying like, "I went to Harvard."
Victor Cedino did that actually.
Huh?
He did that actually. This can be edited.
Oh,
but,
no,
you like okay. So we were talking.
Cambridge.
And
He's a super humble guy.
Yeah, no, he is. But we
that's what everyone
But
does.
it is
It's
so
like,
annoying.
He stood at Rick's wedding,
Yeah.
and we formed like a friendship afterwards. So I was in Minnesota visiting an old friend, and I told Victor, and Victor met us up there, and they were like, "Oh, so where'd you go to school?" And he did that same thing.
Oh,
I went to school in Cambridge.
Yeah, it's like
Well, I was like, wow, like you reenacted pretty much that scene for me.
it's so true. It's so true. And people from Harvard, they will let you know they went there in like the first conversation. Like, it always comes up.
Okay.
In that way, like, but Cambridge.
So it's real. It's not just in the movies.
Oh, yeah,
I thought it was
no.
just in the movies.
Yeah.
Wow. No,
I'm
but
too
so
naive.
it's funny. When I went to Yale, though, there was actually a movement to shut down the divinity school because the admission standards were so much lower than for the rest of the university. So they were like, if you were applying to law school, it's like the best law school in the country,
Right.
and you were off the charts. And the div school, like, people had like B averages and stuff, and they wanted to close
that's
it down.
so terrible. Yeah.
I know.
Let's get
so,
yeah.
We have to work really hard
That's
to
so
be
funny.
here, and they don't. Let's stop this stuff.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and they were
gotcha.
trying to shut it down. So then they raised the standards a lot after I went there. And so later I was on the board, and they were like, "Oh, well, it's not like that low point in the early 90s when we were accepting just about anyone." And I was like, wait a second.
I was one of those people you accepted.
Wait, 19...
Yeah, that's cool.
So then, did you ever like experience or have friends where it's like, oh, hey, I'm Victor. Hey, I'm Lillian. Hey, I'm studying law. It's like, oh, I'm studying divinity. Oh, never
Yeah.
mind.
Studying
I have to
divinity.
go do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Right
No,
now.
and they were often, or they were like, "You can do that here?" Like, nobody even knew about it. They were like, "What?" Like, it's like we were like, it was like you said, "Oh, like I'm studying in the witch program."
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird.
That's a beautiful campus, though. I love Yale's campus.
Well,
been-
back then
been
it
on
was
Yale's
falling
campus?
down, though. It was
Really?
falling down.
The
They were
div
trying
school?
to, like, starve us out. It was like a siege.
Oh
You
my
know,
God.
they wouldn't paint anything. It was, like, terrible.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yale. Do you ever meet anybody, anyone of notoriety, anyone famous who went to Yale? Like, I think Hillary Clinton went there, right?
Yeah, well,
Her and her
actually...
husband?
Yeah. On that note, there was a guy who went to div school with me, Chris Coons, who then went to law school, and now he's a senator
Awesome.
from Delaware.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew that.
That's pretty cool. Are you guys still friends? Chris Coon?
Hey, Chris. No, I haven't seen him in all
Yeah,
this
sure.
time.
Shout out to Chris
yeah,
Coons.
Yeah. Can I come visit the Capitol?
That's awesome.
But my friends went and saw him recently, and they got a tour. They said it was
Pretty
great.
cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I just want to say real quick, I was looking at your website to ask you questions about your book, and I'm just kind of reading, and then the last sentence, suburbs of Chicago, currently devoting herself full time to writing, speaking, and procrastinating. For some reason, that just like resonated with me, and I had to tell everyone because I just do that like all the time. It's really funny that you put that in there.
You're a procrastinator, Lillian?
Yes.
Awesome.
It's
Yeah.
so hard. Like, as a writer, to be a procrastinator, it's really hard because, you don't, like with a sermon, you have to write it. Like there's a deadline. Like you cannot get around Sunday morning. But when you're trying to write a book, there's always like,
I think I'll go make some coffee right now.
Exactly. Like until I have a bagel, and then like, I'm out of cream cheese. I have to go get some, and then I have to go do laundry.
Does your agent get upset at you for not meeting deadlines?
Actually, compared with most writers, I'm better. Writers in general are horrible with deadlines. Horrible. So right now I'm supposed to be working on editing my book.
Yeah, I was going to ask, talk about the one that you're writing right now or finishing up that's coming out next year.
Yeah, so the new book is called Tired of Apologizing for a Church I Don't Belong to.
How long did it take you to come up with that title? Did you come up with the title before you started writing it or while you were writing it?
Yeah, believe it or not, the title was longer before, and my editor helped me shorten it. I don't know why I have these really ridiculously long titles, but basically I'm so sick of how people talk about religion these days. And like when they describe the church, and we're supposed to sort of accept what they're saying, like they stereotype, and we're expected to apologize for it all the time, and I'm just sick of it. And particularly people who are like kind of open-minded Christians are always like, oh yeah, like the Inquisition, like I'm sorry. And it's like, no, I didn't do the Inquisition, like
Gotcha.
Don't describe my church like that.
Yeah.
Like, we ordain women, like we'll do your gay marriage, like no, I'm not going to apologize for the Salem witch trials, like,
Okay.
and like, but sort of pushing back on how people, will talk about the church and lump everything together.
So I have an interesting question, and all of my questions are always interesting.
They are.
No, they're not.
They are.
No, the hell they're not.
Interesting
But
questions,
this one probably is.
Do you go to church?
This question is for me.
Yeah.
That means no. If it's not an immediate yes, it means no.
Victor,
Or it
do you
means,
go to church?
Or it means on Christmas and Easter.
Do you go to church?
No.
Okay.
I do not go to church.
Why not?
But,
Why not?
why not?
Yeah.
I don't go to church because I feel like a lot of the things we are told are lies. I kind of feel like churches have incentives to do things that they shouldn't be doing.
It's a very skeptical mind.
I don't believe in the authenticity of it anymore. I do read my Bible. I do pray to the man upstairs, and I am God-fearing. And I respect everyone.
And he does believe it's a
Let me
man
give you that.
upstairs,
Let me
too.
give you that emoji. This one like this.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like,
Keep going.
that's just me.
So did you go to church growing up and have an experience of church?
Yes, ma'am.
That turned you,
yeah.
Don't go
Why do you do that? No.
I can't. You're a lady with your accomplishments. I've got to. My mother would tear my ears if I didn't refer to you as ma'am. Hi, mom. But I don't know. It's just kind of learning things and just kind of seeing where things are like going. For example, the whole Christmas thing. You know what I'm saying?
Be honest though. Why don't you go to church on Sundays?
Because I don't believe in a lot of the stuff
Dude,
they're saying.
Rix, I got you, Neil. This is why, and this is going to sound very shocking, and people are going to get angry, but it's real. So not going to church, it's like the same thing in college. Like you don't need to go to class to learn how to do what you want to learn how to do. You can go to church. You can go to class and make it beneficial. But it's like if you're just like not that type of person, or you just want to learn by books and interacting with, or whatever the case is, it's no different. It's no.
Okay,
different.
so like this is the thing. So first, I don't care if you go to church or not. Like I don't think
She really does. She's judging.
Yeah.
you deep
No,
down.
but I don't think you're going to burn in hell or anything like that. Like, I don't think Jesus is waiting there and saying, like, oh, Lillian, finally you're here. All your people have got it right, And I believe God works through different religions, too. But what I think is that it's like anything. If you go deeper in it and you take it seriously, you get more from it. So yes, you can learn in different ways. But, for example, like a musical instrument, if you never practice,
Right.
you're not going to have as deep a sense of it. And so
Yeah.
I choose to go deep into a particular religion, Christianity and my own tradition, right? And I think the more you learn about Jesus, the more open-minded you're going to be, because that's what Jesus was, right? And so, but I don't like it, when people will say like, oh, I see God in the sunset or nature. Like, okay, we all see God in the sunset and nature, right? Like, what do you want, a medal? But, but there is some value to, like, community and a tradition and learning
absolutely.
about it,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
See, here's what I think. I think it's on a Sunday morning and it's boring. That is
that's
what
true.
that is what I think is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
if you went to church and there were interesting sermons being preached, if you went to church and it was an engaging service, you'd probably be more likely to wake up.
Well,
people who you're talking
I went,
to. I mean, like, there's so many things that I feel like
I went to church in Chicago with Jeff. And I really, really liked it because it was really, really different than the typical idea you think of with church, and it was really, really fun, and I had a great time. And then I moved out of the city, and so I didn't go there. I wasn't going to commute there.
He met a few girls at church that were attractive. They liked each other, and that's why he kept going to church. The moment he left the city, he stopped going.
You know, that's very real. That's a very real reason. You know?
No. See, the reality is, like, there's so many interesting churches out there, and a lot of people say, oh, the church of my childhood, or that was boring, or whatever.
But the truth is, though, it's like there aren't a lot of good churches out there in reality. It's like
I know.
What are the prerequisites for just opening up a church? You just go like pay the county and you start build. What you guys know?
We
what's
pay
the process?
No taxes.
What's the process like?
Yeah, actually, it's anybody could start a church, right? You know, you can like.
John Oliver started a church.
My great uncle has a church in our village.
Well, we could open one right here, and then you could go.
The temple of straight up.
Oh, my God. That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, then you guys could be a nonprofit.
But I do hear crazy stuff like the amount of money that goes in those offering baskets.
Yeah.
Like thousands upon thousands of dollars. He's told me about, and it's just crazy. Like it's almost like I feel like it's an investment, and if we're talking about a relationship with the Lord, money shouldn't be involved. Now, to what extent? Because money's always got to play some sort of role in anything and everything we do. I mean, I'll have to figure that out, but that's where I am.
I've had people tell me that they've gone to churches or they've been to a church and they've seen just flat screen televisions like in the floor with plexiglass over it. So when you're walking in, you can see like what it's just like the agenda for the day, or like just like it'll have like lyrics to or verse or whatever it is, and I'm just like, the heck are you guys? This is probably like a $4,000 or $5,000 television on top of the cost of installing it. What are you doing
for real?
Are you serious?
Like what?
So this is what they're seeing. Like,
but then I think it's to keep. This is my. I mean, not all churches are like this, but if you look on the other side of things, it would be in my best, I guess, to keep customers coming in.
Well,
just dishing you money out. You can then see what your money is buying you, and you're more comfortable to just go somewhere.
Well, some people, like there are some churches that are set up just like what people are comfortable with in society. So screens, it feels like a stadium, you know. But there are also people like me. I'm never going to go to a church like that. I'm not going to like it, right? I like old school. I like to listen to a person talk. I mean, what you guys are doing here is you're talking, right?
Right.
And it's not flashy. And I think a lot of people are exhausted by screens. You know, they're tired of it. They spend their whole day in front of a screen. And they want to go to church and have it be different, you know, and have it be old school.
I think there's a generational gap, too. I feel like people, you know, in their mid to late 20s are just like, you know, inundated social media, everything that constantly go like that.
That's why I like small groups. So it's so much more enriching and fulfilling than like going and sitting somewhere. But the thing is too, there's different people. So like me, I'd rather do a small group and have that feeling than go somewhere and feel like I'm being maybe not lectured. Is that I don't want to say what those people are doing is not important or have any less value to someone else, but like I would just rather be talking and have a wholesome conversation with people than sit there and be spoken at.
And that's an awesome way to do church. Like, that's how the early church was. Like, it was people sitting in their living rooms and talking about Jesus. Like, that's what they did. And they were eating and they were just talking and hanging out. And then we go from that to, like, having communion and sitting in pews, you know.
Right.
But I do think there's a role of the preacher as, like, the teacher. And sometimes it is good to listen to somebody who's, like, put some thought into it. You know?
What is your opinion on the path to God? And by that I mean, like, I've read several books, Eastern religious books, Christianity, and I want to start reading the Quran just to read all these different things. For the most part, what I've witnessed, it's all kind of the same thing, and then there's little details in each thing. But one book that I read was like, they make this comparison like, well, what's if the objective is to get to the top of the mountain and see God, what does it matter as long as you're taking a path that eventually leads itself up? So can you just speak on that, or what have you heard colleagues of yours say with different things like that or anything?
So I would totally agree with you. Like what you just said, I agree with that. But I think there's value in the path.
Right.
You know, like you dig into something and you learn about it and there's value in it. So I'm happy if you do that in the Jewish tradition or whatever you want to do. I think there's less value in kind of lily dipping around and being like, oh, I consider myself a Quaker.
Right.
And like, does any Quaker think you're a Quaker? You know, like people put a lot of thought into what it means to be a Quaker. And you're like, oh, I read half a chapter about being a Quaker, So, I think there's value in going deep and taking something seriously. And,
right.
Yeah. But as far as getting a prize in heaven because you did it one way, sadly, and I think in heaven we're all going to have to deal with each other, like all those people we thought were wrong.
When I would be reading, like I remember when I started reading the New Testament on a regular basis, starting 5 years ago, and I have all these notes and stuff, and people don't believe me. It's like, no, I got all. Not that I'm trying to prove myself, but I have all these notes of things I found real interesting, and then I was realizing like heaven it's like heaven is here and now. Like there's it's like everything is so beautiful. We're on this earth in this physical world, and like birds chirping and interacting, and everything is just so like great. That's so awesome, but this is like the physical heaven.
Well, okay, but think about this. If God is bigger than time, right?
I know.
And God exists outside of time, then we might have moments of heaven on earth because there's no past or future, right? So in our minds, heaven is in the future because we still exist in time.
What we should do is just get people together from churches and get people together from like NASA and just talk about time and God, because I love talking about that stuff. I love talking about time and space
and being outside
like
of time
creators
is just such a weird concept. Like, and so that's why you think like, oh, will you meet your loved ones in heaven? Yeah, but you might meet like people who haven't been born yet.
Oh my gosh,
I love that
so
stuff.
mind blowing.
Do you
that stuff?
Philosophical conversations.
Do you preach from a Bible, Lillian, or do you reference the Bible in your sermons?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll take like a piece, a thing from the Bible, one piece, and they read it out loud, and then I'll talk about that.
Okay, and then you'll relate that to whatever message you're trying to convey.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you believe that the Bible foreshadows a lot of the stuff that's happening today and like the present right now?
You mean the kooky stuff about like the horses and the rapture and all that?
There's a movie, The Omen.
Actually,
I think they do that in The Omen, the remake from a few years ago. They go through the first 6 trumpets, and like the 7th trumpet is coming, and they use
in jail.
They use
I
real
read the Left
examples.
Behind series.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my god! It was like
the Left Behind series.
It was scary. Like I was like, oh my god! Like I'm glad I'm behind bars,
Yeah,
so
I
that
mean,
the horseman can't get me.
I know. No, I'm so suspicious when people try to interpret the Bible and say, oh, it's about this president or it's about like this government.
Gotcha.
I think that's so stupid. But the Left Behind series is the dumbest ever, and like the movie was hilarious. Kirk Cameron, like, oh my gosh. So he made a movie about the rapture,
starring Nicolas Cage,
and this was so funny. So when they have the moment of the rapture, all the good people disappear from the airplane, and then there's like the stewardess who's like having an affair, and like she's still on the plane, and like everyone who disappears, like their clothes are left there, but not their underwear, and so it's like, did they wear their underwear to heaven? Like, it was so weird.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
That is such an interesting thing to notice. Did you like notice that yourself?
Because I'm sure they were like, oh, it's a Christian movie. We can't show underwear. But it's like, well, let's take that to its logical conclusion. You take your underwear with you.
There's underwear in heaven.
And so your mother's like, oh, change your underwear in case you get taken in an ambulance somewhere. It's like, you'll be wearing it for eternity.
I was going to say, make sure you have a clean pair of underwear for the rapture.
I mean, in heaven, everyone's going to be in their underwear.
Yeah. Okay. So the answer to my question is no, not necessarily.
Yeah, I'm really suspicious when people try to say, oh, the Bible means like this and that in this immediate moment. The thing that's so cool about the Bible is it reflects deep truths about humanity and the world.
Yeah.
So it's like, do I believe that like there was an ark and there were 2 of every animal and stuff, and that that God like sent the flood?
No.
No, like when you go to divinity school, you learn that so many religions have flood narratives that are very similar, But then you ask yourself, why do they have flood narratives? Because there's something deep and important about the idea of rebuilding and the earth being temporary. And
Tell us a little about the article that you have recently on your website. I was reading that earlier with the picture of the ark and
of Noah's Ark.
Of tired of apologizing for a church I don't belong to. What do you do with weird stories like Noah's Ark?
Yeah, what do you do with weird stories like Noah's Ark, right? And I think as a preacher, you acknowledge, like, this is not history, right? Like, this does not, and science is not the enemy of that story. That story is about really screwing up, and you get a second chance, or disaster hitting, and then trying to find meaning in it. But I think Noah's Ark is a funny story.
So you think it's all figurative, not literal?
Right, it's not literal. I mean, who would think it's literal? It's like, hello. And I think we preachers have to acknowledge that. There's smart people sitting there. Like,
do I believe it's literal?
Just
I don't know. I think.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell me?
We've had many of conversations about this.
Well,
or there might have been a boat with a bunch of animals.
But he was also a conspiracy theorist, so that makes it a little more difficult to communicate on a rational.
Really? Remember when I told you what NAMBLA was and you didn't believe me?
Oh my God, man!
Anyways, they actually do have a between me and you. Okay. How about this? All right. Maybe not to that extent. Obviously, maybe it's a little exaggerated. I agree with you there, but like, I mean, there are floods that happen. I mean, it's not like crazy to believe that. Like,
no, I believe that there are floods, but it's like, but can you redeem it? Can you say like God cared about you during the flood, and not say like, well, what happened to the two dodos on the ark? Like, where are they? It's like it's just not
I got you.
It fell overboard.
Okay.
And that's why we don't have dodos anymore.
Right. Or like, where'd they put the dinosaurs on the boat? Like, oh, okay, that's it. I don't believe in the Bible.
They forgot.
Like,
they were late. They
didn't account for dinosaurs. Like, no, like they never thought they were describing biology or history. They always knew that. It's like, but we're like, oh, I can't believe it. That's factually inaccurate. Like, we're the first generation to notice it.
I know what you mean too. But speaking of history, what are your thoughts on the programs on the History Channel? Because I like it because it's just entertaining. Rich is like, oh my gosh, like they're just a bunch of quacks. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. I gotta tell you, I don't have cable, so.
Oh, okay.
Good, you're not missing much. There's not much going on there.
Yeah, like just living in my head is like being in the History Channel. So.
What I've been doing is trying not to watch so much television and like fill my time doing more constructive things like reading a bunch. And I'll watch TV if I'm like eating something real quick. I'll watch for maybe 1 hour a day. But I've noticed like it's okay, I'm not gonna watch TV. Ugh, what do I do? It's like I've already read, I've already played piano, I've already done these things, and I was like, well, I guess I gotta read again. Just keep reading. It's like, oh, it's just pretty nice. Once it's a habit, it's like, okay, this is really nice. Just reading.
I know I don't read enough. Like I watch so much stuff. I still watch a lot of TV, but I just watch it all on my computer. And I binge watch.
In that Netflix game.
Oh,
get you trapped.
That.
What are you on? What are you watching right now?
True Detective.
True Detective. I heard that's so
Detective.
great.
So good. The second season is so good. I just finished The Killing.
I try not to get sucked into that.
Ray Donovan is a little brutal right now, but I love those shows. I basically will watch anything that takes place in outer space or a courtroom. That's my wheelhouse.
What about House of Cards? I've seen like 3 or 4 episodes of that.
Good episode.
Love her clothes. Gosh, she's beautiful.
I need to catch up on these shows. Tell us about your second book. What was the title of it?
The new book, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm tired of apologizing for a church I don't belong to.
What was the first one?
Well, this is actually my 4th book. So.
4th?
Yeah.
My last book was called When Spiritual But Not Religious Is Not Enough.
Okay. Then the one before that.
Go through all the titles. All the titles, chronological order.
Okay. The first book was called Tell It Like It Is. The second book was This Odd and Wondrous Calling. The third book was When Spiritual But Not Religious Is Not Enough. And the 4th book will be Tired of Apologizing.
And that's coming out
for
when?
a church I don't belong to.
Sometime next year.
Yeah, sometime next year. But I'm tired
Whenever
of apologizing. They thought I was here already.
Right.
Well,
this is going to air next year, so it's coming this
year.
year.
It'll be November, I think, or September of 2016.
So in a couple months.
As long as it doesn't get in the way of your procrastinating, it'll come out eventually.
I know. Supposedly the dilemma was, do you put it out before the election or after? because the election.
Are you talking
is,
about the election in your book at all?
Like the presidential election?
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about the presidential election.
That's all intertwined.
But one of the things they're thinking is like when politicians talk about religion, then maybe like my book would be relevant, to say, oh, that's not a good way to talk about religion, or that's okay.
Do you believe politics and religion should be separate? They shouldn't be intertwined?
I don't see how you can separate any of these things. Like, religion is political, and political is about people, and people bring their faith. So I think Americans are sort of weirdly obsessed with this idea of Jefferson's wall that separates church and state. But, like, how do you separate that within yourself,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You ever had a political career? You ever thought about going into politics? No? No.
Other than church politics.
Okay.
Like, yeah. Real politics, that's for amateurs. Pastor, that's like real politics.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what would you say that the current state of preaching is in right now on the wider level?
Oh, gosh. Well, I hear you
It's
about...
kind of a
how
redundant
boring,
question.
How boring. I mean, I do get it. Like recently I've been, not serving a church, and I've been going around to churches, and what passes for preaching is really... can be pretty bad.
Would you say it's because of like the content, or people just don't speak well in front of others, or what do you think attributes to that?
Well, sometimes they'll be excellent speaker, but there is no content. There's no there, kind of what you're describing, like prosperity gospel and all that nonsense. And then other times, somebody might have something to say, but they don't say it well. But mostly I've found it was people not saying anything. Like, they'll be like, oh, blah, blah, blah on the one hand, and then on the other hand. And they use all this crazy phony baloney language, like, let us now, and one might, and now
it's like we're in the 21st century.
Yeah, like who talks like that? Like, let us be about a spirit of prayer. Like, oh my gosh, like who talks like that?
Like super old school 200 years ago type.
Yeah.
In a log church without any air conditioning type stuff.
Right, but it's like one might suggest and one might argue. It's like,
what is going on here?
So see, you're telling people to go back to church, and all they're going to find are these crappy preachers.
Are these in random places? Do you see these in certain regions of the country or certain areas of town, or these are they just come up randomly?
Well, I mean, okay, so it's true. Like, well, if you heard...
What are you doing? What are you doing to us?
I know.
Go back to church. Oh, my God, my eyes are bleeding now.
But there's a lot of people doing intelligent, interesting stuff in churches.
Are there really?
I think so.
There's people that are doing, like, intelligent, interesting stuff not in churches.
That's true, too.
Like
that's
us.
True
That's
too.
what I was referring to.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you have a right to expect good preaching where you learn something and you get something out of it. And so if it's just like, give me money, or buy my new CD series or whatever, like, yeah.
Hey, check out my new mixtape.
Yeah. But yeah, some of it is pretty weird. And I did find, like, when I was going to church and not being the minister, I hate all that sitting and standing.
I get so confused. Am I standing? Am I sitting? And I'm looking around, and everyone else is looking around.
Catholic church especially.
Yeah, and you don't know what you're doing when.
And then, wait, are the words in the book this time? Oh, they're not in the book this time. Okay. Oh,
no, it's the other book. It's the other book that's
under the page. Oh, no, it's in the pamphlet that we gave you. It's in the pamphlet that they gave you.
It's like you're onto something else.
What is going on?
Yeah, and also, like, in some churches, there's just so much talking. Like, now we're going to, like, there's, like, different ministers, and they're like, now we're going to tell you that we're going to do this thing. Now we're going to pray about it. Now we're going to talk about the prayer we just did. Now we're going to explain it again. Now somebody else is going to get up and give a mini sermon. Now it's like, and you're just like, could everybody just shut up?
At least, though, on Christmas, it's, like, actually, it's, like, entertaining. Like, there's bells, and there's singing, and there's candles.
Fire.
Like, give me some of that fire.
No, I think in a lot of churches, there's too many words. And, like, Christmas Eve, people love it because there's stuff other than the words.
Remove the words, just throw in a DVD,
Oh, my God, Victor.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so you're a current pastor.
Yeah.
You'll be going to a new church in February. You're a former pastor.
Yes.
Do either of you guys have healing powers?
Every day through their words.
Seriously.
And prayer.
I mean, when you guys see pastors, like, you too, Ricks, like, when you guys see pastors, like, and you see, like, this theatrical, like, I'm going to heal you type stuff, and, he couldn't walk for such and such time, I touched his knee, now he's walking fine, like, when you guys see all that stuff, like, do you guys just sit back and kind of laugh? Like,
no, I think if you truly have the ability to do that, I wouldn't make a show of it. I would just do it a very humble
Yeah, I would
way.
like go to medical school if I had that.
I think it's all BS when I see that happening. Like when I see
scalpel, and then just kind of like touch him. All right,
Yeah.
this surgery's
No,
done.
I'm very
Magnetic
skeptical of
powers.
it, but I do think like God has healing powers in the world, and I've had times where I've witnessed people who've had healings that you can't explain. I don't think I caused it, and I don't think they caused it either. But I've also, prayed with people and watched something happen. And you can't explain that. That's not about you having a healing power, but I think there's a lot more going on in the world than just what we experience.
Gotcha.
I don't know, my midichlorian count is pretty high. So I think that I have the power to heal.
I'm sure if
Rick's
anyone
making
does,
a
would
joke.
be this guy to my left.
Midichlorian.
Oh, man.
That's really funny.
Sorry, I'm in a Star Wars mood right now.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, but I think, and I mean, I once was in a hospital with this guy who had pulled out his leg from the socket, and this guy was in so much pain, and nobody was willing to just snap it back in place, which was what it required.
Except for you.
You gotta man up.
No, and but they couldn't give him anything either, and he was just there for hours and hours, and it was interesting that I would pray with him, and you could see he would kind of relax a little bit, and he was in excruciating pain,
Yeah.
But finally, I went and yelled at the doctor and said,
They didn't-
he
you
needs
didn't
to
give
go
him,
in there and snap that leg back in, and don't worry about his insurance right now. And finally, somebody went in and they were leave the room, and they're and then he was yeah, but
They wouldn't even give him aspirin or anything.
no, they wouldn't give him anything. It was
We can't give him aspirin. He might
it was
die.
terrible.
And we don't want to be
It was
sued.
terrible. Yeah.
I mean, I YouTube some of that stuff. It is just it's very amusing to me.
What?
Someone won't be able to walk, and they'll get healed by a pastor, and somebody from the South, and they're
Yeah.
you don't need that cane, and
Yeah,
then
they
throws it across, and the guy starts walking this, and he's I've been saved, I'm just
Have you ever been to a church with people remember that scene in Borat when he's running up and down in the church where people are falling down, passing
I
out,
love
and going
the movie
crazy?
Borat.
Seriously?
I love that movie. Yes, yes.
Oh my
There's
goodness.
so many we could go off on Borat,
Oh my-
but I love Borat.
You love Borat.
I do. I like it when he's meeting with the feminists.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Oh my gosh.
I forgot that scene.
He's being interviewed by these feminists, and he's I cannot understand what this man is saying to me.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It was like,
I love that
Funny
movie.
girl.
Just has no
Funny
boundaries.
girl. Oh man.
so funny.
Yeah.
His
Cool.
sister.
Well, is there anything that you want to talk about that we didn't ask or have covered yet?
Yeah. What do you got going on? In the new year besides your book and new job, you're about to be busy.
I have cats.
How many
You got a lot
cats
of
you
cats?
got?
3.
3.
Yeah.
Do you know where I can? You know where I can get a cat? Because I've been yearning for a small animal to have around lately, just a puppy or a kitten. Just
Or squirrel.
no squirrels.
Squirrel.
If
On
they
a
can be
leash. On a leash
domesticated,
walking squirrel.
if a squirrel could be domesticated, that'd be kind of cool. But it'd be weird to just have one that's from outside.
I love cats. You can't have one of mine. I'm
No, you can keep the cats, Lillian.
You know?
I will pick up one of your books though. Rick says you're a very good writer.
Do you do
I'd love to read some of your stuff.
when your book comes out? Are you going to do a book signing? Do you do book signings? Have you?
Yes. Yeah. No, I'll probably have a tour about the book and go places
Tour,
and talk
nice.
about it. Yeah.
Are these
Of course
places
she does.
Huh?
inside the United States or outside the United States?
I want to go outside the United States. I'll do anything to go outside the United States.
Nice.
Yeah, depending on how the election goes.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I may be moving. No, no, it's really fun. My rule though is I don't like to go talk places where people haven't read the book. So anybody, if they read the book, I'll go talk about it. But I hate it when they want you to come and then they're like, "Tell us about your book." I'm like, "No, that's why I wrote it."
Yeah.
All the good stuff is in the book.
That's a very
Read
good
the
answer.
book.
Yeah,
and then
like,
I'll come over.
That's the whole point. That's why people write books, because it
should
took
be.
200 pages to say it.
Yeah.
Well, what's it about? I don't know.
They want to have the book and have you tell them about it, and then say, "Oh, she told me about the book.
Exactly.
I didn't read. I didn't read it."
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's it took me all that time to write it.
It's pretty cool.
How do you decide your topics for your various
Yeah.
books?
What I often do is just I do a ton of writing, and then I step back from it and I say, "Oh, there's the topic." This tired of apologizing thing keeps coming up.
Yeah.
It's not like I sit down and say that's what I'm going to write about. It's more like I look at what I have.
Experiential.
Yeah. So, it could also be like stories about like my dead parents and cats. Would be another title, possibly.
Also very funny.
But yeah,
I've heard somebody refer to their parents. Oh, yeah, my dead parents.
My dead parents and
my
my
late
cats.
parents or my parents who've passed.
That's a lot of my writing. Is people said stories about like your dead parents and your pets. Like you got to be honest, but like nobody wants to publish that book. Stories
Why?
about my
'Cause
dead
it's
parents
not-
and my cats.
Because
Doesn't sound very like intellectual or.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's not.
but it's real. It's real. You know.
It's straight up.
It's
Nice. Perfect.
Man.
Straight up.
Okay,
we,
so-
we can end on that.
Yeah, we'll say what is your if you could say give one pitch to these two dudes to like try and convince them to go to church. Maybe me. We're gonna get that.
You know, I'd say be open. Be as open,
I'm open.
about that. Like so.
Victor's
I'm
very open.
but
I am open.
He just doesn't.
But how can you can't expect me to be engaged when I feel bored?
So you shouldn't
So
go
I
to
gotta
that
go
church.
to the right. You gotta find the right
That's
place.
what I'm saying. Like, so if you were like looking for a college, right, and you visited one college and you didn't like it, you don't say, "Well, that's it." Like,
Right.
I didn't like it. You know, I'm not going. You'd be like, "No, I'm going to keep looking at colleges."
We
till
shouldn't
I-
generalize
certainly-
churches because we've had a couple of bad
Yeah,
experiences.
so I'm
You know what we
saying
need?
put as much effort into it as you would put into other areas of
Dating,
your life.
you know.
Dating, yeah. Like you don't say like, "Yeah, I had a bad date. I'm never going to do it again." You
The
know.
Yeah, the benefits of this church is this. The benefits
Yeah.
of this church is that.
But like so often people are like, "Oh, I hate church." When's the last time you went? 10 years ago. You know, how many churches did you go to? Like one, you know.
Okay.
And it's like, wow, you wouldn't say that about something else, you know.
right.
to say,
yeah,
Lillian,
I
I
know.
don't think you've sold them.
Yeah.
No,
The church.
I'm not saying
I know
I'm not
it's kind
going
of
to
like
church.
what I'm saying
I'm
is
just
like
saying-
it's going to be horrible, but go to 10 and you might find one good.
I get it. She's just like keep an open mind. You can't just because you had a bad experience
Yeah.
someplace doesn't mean they're all
And
terrible.
put some effort into it. You
I
know?
don't think you got to work at it.
You
Like
do.
instruments, like
Yelp for
anything, you got to
churches.
work at it. There's going to be times where you don't want to
absolutely.
Yeah.
There's none
go to
like in our
church or do
community like
anything.
that.
But yeah, but I think, you know, especially when life hits you with some serious pain and agony, that's where having a religious tradition in place is helpful. And you don't want to be out looking at that moment. You know, it's like that. It's the sort of thing where you should put some work into it throughout your life as you would about being educated.
Think of it
about
as preventative care.
ideas. Yeah, you know, but you put some work into it. You don't sit back and say, "Oh, it's like
You
boring."
can't be
or, like-
complacent. You can't just go so you can
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I went to church." Check
But
that off
also,
the
like,
weekly
yeah, if you don't
checklist.
want to go, don't go. You know, but don't say things about the church like, "Oh, it's all full of like hypocrites" or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, if we're ever in Dubuque, Iowa, I'm sure.
So,
Yeah, what church are you? What church are you gonna be
First
working at?
Congregational, Dubuque, Iowa.
Okay, we'll come check you out for sure.
Oh, I would love that. We
That'd
could
be
do
great.
like a
Absolutely,
show there.
yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be
We
fun.
could do a
So
show
you're heading to
there.
Dubuque, Iowa, and your website is lilliandaniel.com. Are you on Twitter?
Mhm.
What's your Twitter handle?
Lillian F. Daniel.
Lillian F. Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You want to give him the other Twitter handle?
No.
What?
Do we want? No, you have to tell us now.
We won't go there.
We can edit it.
Is
We can edit it out.
that
if
the
you wanna
Lillian
tell
Daniel
us.
account when she's not wearing the collar?
It's like I have one. Seriously, it's like top secret. Shitty Ministers Club.
Oh, perfect.
But my Twitter handle is Shitty Ministers.
Oh my goodness. Shit.
That's like a secret underground.
Well, what is it? Rev?
Awesome.
Irrev.
Irrev, yeah.
You're right.
That's where I put like just like things I'm annoyed about.
Oh my goodness.
Like stop
See,
posting
no.
pictures of your own cooking on Facebook. Like,
You should write a book of Proverbs, Lillian. Seriously.
Book of-
Like your own like little
Really?
Lillian Daniels Proverbs. You've got some interesting
don't
stuff to
eat
say.
anything bigger than
You
your
can
head.
make a calendar, a fun
Never
like
eat in a
calendar
place
out of
named
it.
Mom's.
Oh my goodness.
Never help a friend move. Like words to live by. Like,
Never date a girl with two first names.
Oh, really?
That's what I've
That
heard.
eliminates like all my southern relatives. Like that's it. Like Mary Harris. Like
Sorry,
that's yeah. Like
We'll wait till 2017 when you put that one into place. 2016, we'll keep an open mind still.
yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm out of questions. I'm great.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that wraps things up. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your thoughts.
Yeah,
This was
thank
really
you.
fun.
Yeah,
Thank you
this
so
was
much.
entertaining.
All right,
Appreciate
cool.
it.
Thank you.